Hello, everyone. Welcome into Southeastern 14. I am Blayne Gilmer here to talk to you about SEC football. Once again, we are Southeastern 14. Like I said, daily SEC sports coverage. I cover football. You have Chris Lee, Blake Lovell covering basketball. So, guys, we are so excited during this time of the year to be talking about the Portal King, Lane Kiffin. The transfer portal is up and roaring, and Ole Miss is going through there like crazy. I mean, it is it's like the old Cat Williams deal when he went through and said, "Hey, every day I'm hustling." He said you could play that song and just go through the grocery store and just be picking stuff off the shelves, and that is seems what Lane Kiffin and company are doing here in the transfer portal as they are bringing in. No, this is not a all-star or an all-American team of players going across the screens behind me. Those would be the players that Ole Miss has brought in, with the exception of Walter Nolan. It's not official yet, but Walter Nolan getting close over there in the transfer portal. It is a who's among college football, especially the guys who have entered the transfer portal. So we will be going through that list here in just a minute and also talking about what it means for Ole Miss in the 2024 season. But make sure, guys, if you like everything SEC sports related, like I said, football, basketball, baseball, we're going to have it all right here on Southeastern 14. Also coming up with a little rebrand here soon because there's no longer 14 teams, there's 16 teams. So there'll be a little name change before the end of the year here. So we're excited about that as well. But we're also excited about one of our partners here on the show. That would be Bet Online. Guys, we're a part of the Believe Network, and we want you to know as well that you can partner with Bet Online for all of your betting info, everything that you want to do. You want to go set some action aside over there. Bet Online is the place where you need to do it. All the major sports are in action right now during the winter time here. The college football playoffs are ready to kick off. The bowl games are going. Bet Online is your number one destination for all your sports wagering info, news, including pro football, the NBA, upcoming UFC fights, the NHL games this season. Head over to the website, betonline.ag today. That's betonline.ag today to get into the action and see all the updated odds for the week. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, all caps BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. And guys, we're just going to start with this tremendous list and go through of who these players are that Ole Miss has added, where they come from, and what it means for Ole Miss in the 2024 season. The bulk of the work in the transfer portal so far has been done by Ole Miss on defense. However, there have been some key additions on offense that we will go through here real quick before we get to what Pete Golden and that defense are doing. And the wide receiver position has been addressed. Not that it was in terrible need, but they were losing some key pieces. Dayton Wade testing the NFL waters, Jordan Watkins, testing things out. But, you have Trey Harris that is going to be coming back, but they've added Juice Wells and Deion Smith. Juice Wells, the number one receiver when healthy for South Carolina, did a lot of great things over there. He's a guy who's very explosive. He had a foot injury that he was dealing with. Now there's been rumors back and forth. Well, maybe he could have played. Was there part of him sitting out, things like that? Who knows? But Lane Kiffin went all in, leveraging not only NIL stuff, but also making hoodies with the word Juice, leveraging the fact that Lane Kiffin's dog was named Juice, that was social media and all this kind of stuff. So he went all in on Juice Wells, and Juice Wells lands in Oxford, who is going to be, you line him up across from Trey Harris, and that is as dynamic of a 1-2 punch in the entire country when you're talking about on the receiving front. And then you add Deion Smith, a guy who has been in the community college and junior college ranks after having a freshman season at LSU, where, you know, he had a little bit of production, almost 200 yards receiving, a couple touchdowns, but some academic issues kept him from getting back up into the FBS level. Now, you know, had over 1,000 yards receiving and 12 touchdowns in the junior college ranks last year, and, you know, had a lot of offers out there on the table, but ends up coming to Ole Miss. So that is a electric wide receiving group. And like I said, with Trey Harris coming back, and then you have both Jackson Dart and Quinshaw Judkins coming back on the offensive side of the ball, that is a big pickup. Now, also, as I said on here on the offensive line, you see on the graphic, Jerquan Scott, who comes from Southern Miss. He's one of the top interior offensive linemen that entered the transfer portal. He's a big guy. Like I said, got that wide base, got that wide rear end, can get movement in the duo and the zone game, but is also athletic enough to be able to pull around in the gap scheme game, and just really is going to be the kind of guy that Lane Kiffin loves to utilize up front, and kind of a road grader. He's a guy that Lane Kiffin, when his offense is at its best, it's because the run game is clicking, and they have so many different variances in just, it looks like they're running a lot of the same runs and things like that. But whether it's in the zone game, in the duo game, in the gap scheme game, Lane Kiffin is a master at just having tiny variances of different things he can do schematically up front, not only with the offensive lineman, but with the backfield action and things like that. And adding a guy like Jerquan Scott there from Southern Miss, a guy who is a really good player for the Golden Eagles, is going to be a big plus for Ole Miss going forward. And like I said, not only helps protect Jackson Dart, but also helps that run game get going over there. And Ole Miss had injury problems at towards the end of the year last year on the offensive line. So always getting as much depth and getting more bodies that are capable of doing things along the front there are huge. Now, speaking of guys who are capable of doing things along the front, they've definitely addressed the defensive side of the ball when it comes to rushing the passer on the edge. With Tyler Barron and Princely Umanmielen, Ole Miss has just added not only just talented edge rushers, but talented edge rushers with SEC experience. You're bringing the top pass rusher from Tennessee, arguably. Now, I know they've got James Pierce there, but Tyler Barron coming into the year was the guy who people thought was going to be the top pass rusher, and then Princely Umanmielen from Florida. So you got Tennessee, one of Tennessee's best edge rushers, and one of Florida's best edge rushers coming into Ole Miss, added on top of Jared Ivey, who obviously had a productive year, on top of J.J. Pegues, who's coming back more in the middle of that defense. But you have a very athletic defensive front, and added some much needed just guys here that you can rotate in, and also just keep people fresh and continue to rush after these passers in the SEC. Now, you're adding with these two guys, you're not just adding guys who have experience, not adding guys who've had talent. You've adding guys who have produced. Tyler Barron, 10.5 tackles for a loss and 6 sacks for Tennessee in the 2023 season. And Princely U for Florida, he had 11.5 tackles for a loss and 7 sacks. You're adding 22 tackles for a loss total, and you're adding 13 sacks total to a defense that was pretty disruptive at different times. Now, they were a little bit leaky on the back end, and they're trying to figure that out a little bit. But this was a defense that at different points in time could get after the quarterback, and Pete Golden loves to bring pressure, and he's going to be able to find ways to use those guys tremendously. And that is just, listen, this is a who's who. Like I said, when you're talking about names like Tyler Barron, when you're talking about names like Princely Umanmielen, these are guys that Georgia wanted both of these guys. So this was a big deal that Ole Miss is able to land these two out of the transfer portal. I mentioned on the back end, they need to get a little bit better. They've been able to address that, bringing in a lot of defensive backs. Lewis Moore, a safety that from Indiana that is a tackling machine. He came down and made a ton of tackles. Also has some ball skills as well. A couple of interceptions for Indiana during his time there. So he comes from playing Big Ten to the SEC. He ought to be used to the physicality. Now, how does he do with coverage skills, things like that? We'll see. Tavion Nicholson comes in from Illinois. He's a corner, a guy that's 5'11", 170, plays a little bit longer than that, though, so he could be used in different spots as well. Do they play him just at corner? Can he come in and play the nickel? We'll see about that. Tamarion Arnold is a guy who not a full-time starter, at different times started for Tennessee, but he's got that SEC experience, and he's going to be able to play not only on defense but also on special teams and help out a ton there. And then Key Lawrence from Oklahoma, a guy that has a ton of experience as well. And the Sooners are coming into the SEC, so that is another player that Lane Kiffin is taking away from now an SEC program. So Lane Kiffin, guys, when it all comes down to this, what does this mean? Well, it means that Lane Kiffin told you exactly what was happening and nobody was really listening. He's been beating the drum the last couple of SEC media days saying, hey, this NIL thing, it's pay for play. It's legalized cheating is what it is. And much like his former mentor, Nick Saban, that he worked under at Alabama, when Nick Saban told everybody, hey, for years, he told everybody, hey, all these rules that you're wanting to change in favor of the defense, you're wanting to make everything, or in favor of the offense, and you're wanting to make everything wide open with these offenses and make it harder for the defenses to stop people. If you want to transition to all that, that's fine. I'll go do it, and I'll be better than anybody that does it. And look what Alabama did, revolutionizing. That's why he brought Lane Kiffin in, to revolutionize that offense, to be wide open. And then what did he say about the transfer portal? Hey, if you guys really want to do this, I don't agree with this, all this kind of stuff. But if you want to do this, nobody's going to be better at it than Alabama. Nobody's going to attract better people than Alabama. So that's what he's went and done. And now within the combination of NIL and the transfer portal, Lane Kiffin is living up to the moniker of the portal king. Only one transfer class is ranked higher than his, and that's be Colorado, just because Colorado is literally trying to flip their entire roster through the transfer portal once again, it would seem, especially their offensive line, things of that nature. But Lane Kiffin has brought in so far, and if you add the addition of Walter Nolan, who seems to be all but committed to Ole Miss at this point, and it could come at any time as we record this on December 18th. In fact, many people inside of the building think it's already has happened. So when you're talking about Walter Nolan added to the mix, maybe the best player in all of college football along the front, and then particularly in the transfer portal, when you're talking about Walter Nolan being added, that's 8 guys that can, and also Chris Paul Jr. I didn't even mention Chris Paul Jr., inside linebacker from Arkansas, who's going to really help out there and be a big part in the middle of that defense. You're talking about 8 guys who can start on the defensive side of the ball potentially for Ole Miss if they win out the jobs. 8 guys that have a realistic shot of being starters on this defense that are added through the transfer portal. And really, there's only one way to describe what's going on. There's a lot of money being put out there by Ole Miss. They are investing in the portal. This is not a deal where Lane Kiffin's going to try to sugarcoat it and hide things and be like, oh, hey, no, these guys just coming here because they love Oxford. No, he'll tell you, hey, we're spending money in the portal, trying to get the best quality players possible. People forget Lane Kiffin's been a head coach in the NFL. His dad, Monty Kiffin, was around in the NFL for a long time. He knows what it means to go out and get big time free agents and stuff like that. And that's what this is. It's free agency. There's no cap limit. So at the very minimum, there's a lot of money being promised to these Ole Miss players because they're not coming for free. We'll see what happens when it comes to collectives and donors. There's been lots of tales of, hey, this money was promised, but it doesn't get paid out. So there's going to be one of 2 things happen. The first is, well, this one's going to happen regardless. Before we get to the one of 2 things, what is going to happen is this fan base from Ole Miss is going to expect a lot out of this team because like I said, these names, these photos going back behind me, this isn't an all-American team. This isn't a all-star team, something like that. This is the additions. These are the additions that Ole Miss has brought in. And when you bring in that much production, that much talent all at one time, and especially when it's experienced talent, when it's experienced people who have put out that production, that have proven they can play, when you're returning as much as they are in Jackson Dart and Quinshad Judkins, then the expectations are through the roof. Ole Miss fans are going to expect playoffs, especially with it being 12-team playoffs or bust, and then probably a deep run in the playoffs. I would suspect they're it's biblical. Okay, to whom much is given, much is required. Okay, that is a biblical principle. And Lane Kiffin is a man who he's been posting a lot of scripture, a lot of wisdom on social media throughout the last year or so, and I think he'll understand that principle, that with all of this talent that's influxed, hey, there's going to be pressure at Ole Miss, and pressure either makes diamonds or bursts pipes. Okay, and we'll see if Ole Miss is able to do that. But here's one of two things are going to happen: either you're going to bring in this collection of talent mixed with the returning guys who kind of have the culture and have the Ole Miss kind of love for Ole Miss in their veins, and you're going to add these new guys to it, and it's either going to work tremendously and they're going to be one of the more talented teams in the country and probably a top 5 team preseason with all this talent that they're bringing in and all the experience that they have returning, based off of, okay, you were already a 10-win team a couple years in a row, and then you're then on top of that, now you've got all these guys returning back. You've got all these players that have been top players at other SEC programs and programs throughout the country. So you're probably going to be ranked really high, and they're either going to live up to the expectations, they're going to make the first ever 12-team playoff and be a really, really hard out for somebody, maybe have a potential to host a first round playoff game, maybe even be in an SEC championship game, something they couldn't do when it was in the division area. Really, they couldn't get over that hump against the Alabamas and the LSUs and people of that nature, the Auburns of the world. But if they do that, then you see a different model created here by Lane Kiffin. Not worry as much about the high school ranks of recruiting. Do what you need to do to fill in areas and things like that, but just really go in and hammer that portal. And maybe it's a deal where you can't do it every year. Maybe you load up every 3 years with the NIL money and raising funds and things like that, and say, hey, this year the schedule looks favorable for us. We're going to go in, we're going to load up, and we're going to get as much talent as we can, and we're going to make a run at it this year. And that may be what you have to do, because in the NFL they have to do that. Not every NFL team sets out every year saying, hey, we're going to win the Super Bowl, because they know that, hey, but with the salary cap, with where we are, with draft picks, all that kind of stuff, we have to be strategic about when we're going to ramp things up and try to go forward and things of that nature. And I think Lane Kiffin has been pretty transparent and saying, hey, right now we don't have the talent. Right now we don't have this. We don't have that. We need to go get better players here. We need to go get better players there. He's been telling people, it's not been a dog whistle type thing. He's been telling people, hey, we're going to do this. We just have to pick our spots and get the right formula together and all that kind of stuff. Well, now I think with the combination of the schedule that Ole Miss has, which is one of the easier ones in the SEC this upcoming year, and then also, now I know that they have to play Georgia and things like that, but they get Georgia at home. So that's going to be a lot easier than playing in Athens this past year, things of that nature. But when it comes down to it, I think Ole Miss, with the schedule this year, with the experience they have, with the 12-team playoff, they decided, hey, this is the year to go attack it and go after it. And that's either going to work out really greatly, like I said, that's the first scenario, or this is going to blow up in Lane Kiffin's face, because you're bringing in all these guys that are promised all this money. Can you get them to buy into the team concept? Does the money actually get paid out to these guys? Can you manage all the egos? Can you make sure that, hey, guys who are, they were already there, that are getting passed up for playing time for some of these other guys, how do you manage that? And what happens if it all falls apart, kind of a la Jimbo Fisher with what they were able to do, not necessarily in the transfer portal, but what they did through the high school recruiting ranks. I think the way that Lane Kiffin's going about it is probably the smarter approach, because you have guys, at least what they can do in the college ranks when you're bringing them in to do this. But it's either going to be boom or bust, like I said, over there for Ole Miss, because the expectations are going to be through the roof. And like I said, you go look in the 12th chapter of Luke, okay? To whom much is given, much is required. And that is going to be the mantra, the theme, the narrative around Ole Miss this year, with all of these players returning, all of these players coming in via the transfer portal, and they may not be done. So, guys, this has been Southeastern 14. We've been talking about the Ole Miss transfer portal haul here for the 2024 class. 9 transfers so far, actually, on board. Walter Nolan should be the 10th before too long. And it is quite the significant amount of pickups that they have. And we will be excited to see how everything goes for this transfer class, and can they produce with Texas and Oklahoma coming into the SEC. You got Georgia and Alabama, of course, the perennial powers. LSU and Auburn are right there. Missouri is really trying to tier up into that next level there. Tennessee had a down year this year from what they had 2 years ago, but there's a lot of teams that are right there that feel that they're not far away from winning this thing and getting into, especially with the 12-team college football playoff next year. It's going to be very, very exciting. Guys, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We greatly appreciate that. It helps us out a lot. And listen, we're going to provide you with a lot of content, so you want to be a part of this anyways. Remember, we got the rebrand coming here soon, and we're partnered with Bet Online, who helps present this show. So thank you so much for tuning in. Like I said, like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We'll catch you guys next time to talk more SEC football right here on Southeastern 14.